Okay, let's talk more about this and other measures to counter inflation. For that, I'm joined by Arthur Dong. Always a pleasure. He is a teaching professor at the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown University right here in Washington, D.C. Arthur, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Sean, for having me on.
I want to hear your thoughts on California's strategy to tackle inflation. I heard the one individual say $1,000 isn't enough, and I hear that. But it's not just fuel. I mean, grocery bills have gone crazy.
Yes, Sean. As indicated in your previous segment by interviewing people on the street, CPI or core inflation has risen by 6.2% as of the end of September. And inflation that strips out energy as well as food prices is trending at 8.2%. So there's a degree of persistence that is currently being seen and experienced in the United States. Persistence with this inflationary conundrum that most citizens are confronting in the United States.
Conundrum may be a kind word. I think other people may dig a little bit deeper on that. But the question, I guess, that people are asking right now, do other states, other than California in the United States, have any kind of similar policy?
Yeah, we've seen the state of Virginia as well as the state of Hawaii implement similar types of measures. But bear in mind that these measures can only go so far, and that they're highly dependent on the state's financial ability to do so. So for states that have a degree of financial surplus, they're going to use this as a measure to try to abate inflationary impact for its citizens. But not every state can do that. It's only those states that have enjoyed a degree of fiscal surplus. And so it's a one-time deal, and it certainly will help to the extent that most citizens, as close to 23 million people in the state of California, are eligible for this payment. It certainly will help, but it certainly is not going to, in a sense, completely address the inflationary pressures that most families face.
And I understand the philosophy behind bumping up interest rates, tapping the brake, if you will, to kind of slow down the economy to keep it from overheating. But you look at what's going on in the housing market. I mean, that was on fire here in the United States for such a long time. Can people benefit enough from these policies to provide some kind of inflation relief and yet still tackle these huge mountains that we're facing in terms of trying to pump money back into the economy?
Broadly speaking, there aren't many policy tools that the U.S. Federal Reserve can implement with regard to, tending to inflation. And so the use of the interest rate mechanism by which you raise the cost of capital across the board, both to families as well as institutions and businesses, is one way to, in a sense, arrest demand within the economy. And so if you can, in some way, at a macroeconomic level, start to arrest demand, at some point there will be normalization, and you should start to see a decline in prices. So this is a high priority for the current administration. And given the sort of aggressiveness that we've seen and the inability to really arrest inflation, I dare say that the Federal Reserve is on tap for another 75 basis point increase in interest rates. And some economists are even forecasting further increases in the months ahead.
Okay, I get what you're saying, and I understand why it has to happen. But there are people out there right now just gritting their teeth saying, I can't afford a new car, even if we didn't have the supply chain issues. Buying that new house is out of the question. I had all this money tucked away in my 401k for a comfortable retirement. Now it's gone. Do you understand the frustrations, and what can be done to help these people?
Yeah, it certainly restricts, the ability for people to, to advance their purchases. And so when you think about consumer credit, whether it's credit cards, car loans, and certainly real estate and mortgage loans, all of these are going to be seriously impacted as consumers face a higher cost of borrowing. And that also filters into the industrial economy as companies also face similar increased borrowing costs, which will also affect their decisions to make certain types of expenditures. And so, yes, there's a trade-off here, and that trade-off is reduced ability for consumers and individuals and families to, in a sense, accelerate their purchases into the present.
I'm going to push you to the edge of your extreme. You have 30 seconds to answer this. Inflation is a global issue. Are these local and national policies going to do anything?
Well, it all depends on what your view on inflation is. If the inflationary pressures are derived from structural features in the global economy, those are going to be harder to deal with and be much more persistent and long-lasting. And when I say structural features, those are elements such as, oil shocks and energy shocks, geopolitical tensions, trade wars, and these types of things that are oftentimes external to your home economy,
Right.
over which you have, less control, and thereby having, some degree of persistence in terms of forcing up prices around the world.
Okay. Arthur Dong, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your insight. Now, moving on.